Hey guys, it's February 18th, 2018, and this is your episode 134 of At Percussion. I'm your host, Casey Cangelosi, and with me, as usual, are Laurel Black.
Hi.
And Megan Arns.
Hello.
Ben Charles is chopping out online.
Hi, everybody.
Chopping out online again, Ben?
Chopping out on some slow Piazzolla.
It's good. I saw that. It's looks good.
I'm surprised you didn't make a comment because I was using Pius's mallets.
Oh, you were? Okay, I'll edit something in. Yeah, and also Caleb Pickering's joining us. What's up, Caleb?
Hey, not much.
Cool. Well, you guys, our guest today is the Director of Operations for C. Allen Publications. He has a unique career spanning performance, recording, composition, teaching, and business at C. Allen. He's regularly commissioned by soloists and groups alike, and he's an avid runner in his spare time, and he was snagged by Laurel Black because they've crossed paths a lot on the Health and Wellness Committee and frequently do the PASIC super early morning fun run. So please, hello and welcome to Nathan Daughtrey. How's it going?
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, sure. So when did you start this PASIC Fun Run thing?
So this whole thing is Ben Wallen's fault. Ben was heading it up for a couple of years, and I had just run like the Chicago Marathon, or I don't know, it was one of my marathons that I'd run, and he knew this because of Facebook or whatever. So he contacted me and said, "Hey, I'm going to have my whole studio with me this year at PASIC, and would you mind taking over the fun runs?" Or the fun run, it was like one day at that point, and I decided to expand it to every single morning of PASIC. So yeah.
That's your fault. You can't blame Ben for that.
That part is my fault, but he's never since offered to take it back over. So
maybe he just felt like he didn't want to get in your way.
Right. I was just doing such an amazing job. Yeah. So I don't know. That was like 6 years ago, maybe. Yeah.
So, Nathan, I have a question about all this because it's funny. Whenever I see anything listed about you online, a bio, it always seems to make a reference to your running. And I was wondering, is this something that, were you on the track team in hii school, or is this something that started as an adult, or what? How'd you get into this?
No, I was always quite out of shape through middle school, high school. I was always, the chubby one carrying the big bass drum. So no, I didn't start running until, I was living in Houston back in 2017. One of my friends that I met while I was down there was a runner, and I just decided to start getting in better shape, and so he got me into running. So I mean, it's just been about 10 years or so.
Gotcha.
Nathan, am I understanding right? You went and saw Snarky Puppy last night?
Yes, that's accurate. Yeah.
What's that like?
It was awesome. It was a big party. I didn't know. I mean, I'd never seen him live. Live in person. I'd seen videos and such. So it was cool. I didn't know what to expect with the audience. I'm a big fan of Punch Brothers too, and it's a really eclectic crowd whenever you go to one of their shows. It's kids that are in high school, college, middle-aged hippies. I mean, whoever, fans of bluegrass or whatever. But so I didn't know. I thought maybe it was going to be a similar thing, but I don't know. It was a younger demographic there than I expected, which is cool. It was really cool. I mean, it was just really, really high energy and a lot of fun. One of the highlights of the night didn't have too much to do with them. So a friend of mine, my friend Laura Stevens, who's a flute player, and I've played several pieces with her. And her sister-in-law is Becca Stevens. I don't know if you know Becca Stevens. She's a singer-songwriter, multi-instrumentalist. And she's played with Snarky Puppy on a few occasions. And she was on their Family Dinner Volume 2. First track on that album is her song. So anyway, she was there last night with my friend Laura and her husband. And so getting to meet her was pretty cool.
That's awesome.
I tried not to be a big fanboy and embarrass myself.
The other, you said you were curious what the audience demographic would be like. It's also interesting what the band demographic will be like, because Snarky Puppy is not like the same 5 people every time. It's like, I think they call it a collective of musicians that
you mean like
swap in and out, so you never know who's going to be there other than Mike League.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it was 9 people on stage last night. Plus, I guess he's been with the Ground Up record label. They've been featuring one of the artists on the label for the first set of their show. And so this is a woman. She had won the Montreux Jazz Festival vocal competition recently, and she's like, I don't know. She's not from the United States, so she's from like several different countries, and she was awesome. Really, really, really amazing.
Nathan, I have a question about composition. I saw in our show notes we have a little something about being pigeonholed as a composer, people will say. Mm-hmm. And we definitely had questions come up like that on the podcast, and we've had multiple composers, and a question that often comes up is, how do you avoid being kind of typecast or pigeonholed as a composer? Do you have an answer to that?
Yeah, and that's not even, I don't even feel like someone has said to me, hey, you are this kind of composer.
Right, for sure.
Really
Agree.
Internal assumption.
Agree perfectly. Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah.
I don't think that about you at all.
No. I wasn't suggesting you did. But no, that I did say that. And it's more of an internal thing and internal just dialogue that I have. Whenever, in any given year, I can kind of look back at the year and be like, oh man, I really neglected this area. How is that going to reflect on me? Once these pieces are out and available to everybody, it's just a constant dialogue in my brain of that. So what I guess more specifically, what I mean is, I write pieces at really all grade levels, all difficulty levels. Whether it's a grade 1 concert band piece or, a middle school percussion ensemble piece, but then all the way up to, grade 5, 6 symphonic band and really challenging percussion ensemble. So that's it. It's just trying to continue filling in the blanks across the spectrum. And I try to do so across the year. And it's tough when almost everything you're writing is on commission. It's tough to balance that, but nonetheless, it's there.
You mentioned commission, and I often get the question, how do commissions work? What's the procedure? And I feel like my answer is always different, and it's always case by case. And, like how much more would you charge Ben for a commission than Laurel?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, that was supposed to be a joke. Nobody laughed.
Right. Well, Laurel has a new baby, so
less. Right.
That would be a little bit less. Yeah.
I don't know. I guess I feel like everyone in the room right now on the Skype chat knows this answer, but I think a lot of our listeners might not, and they kind of wonder like, what is a commissioning process like for you?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. I mean, so many of the factors are. It's when do you need it? That's always a big one. If someone needs something like next month, the price might be a little bit higher. I'll give an example. I'm about to start working on a piece for combined band, orchestra, and choir at the grade 3 level. So it's like it's for a high school, but they want to use everybody in the music program. They're opening this new performing arts center at the high school. And I mean, this is not something that's going to be really terribly successful outside of this performance, right? So that had to be a factor too. Is this going to get any more performances out of this one?
Right.
Probably not. And I had to give that justification to them for the price that I was charging.
Sounds like a Bernstein mass. Like the Bernstein mass. How often is that going to play?
Excerpt, or I can probably take a band piece out of it. I can probably make an orchestra piece and a choir piece with piano accompaniment, those type things. But as a whole, that piece is not gonna have wings probably. So that's a factor. Of course, duration and difficulty level and number of players and size of the ensemble, all of those things are.
Yeah, sure.
Too.
Yeah, there you have it, folks. Caleb, you had a good question, didn't you?
I did, and I sent it to you. I'm going to have to read it, so maybe come back to me.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I have a question, actually, I'd like to ask.
Yeah.
I've heard Blake Tyson talk quite a bit about composing, and Blake says that a lot of people are afraid to get into composing because the first thing they compose won't be very good. And he often says, well, like, how was your first marimba solo you ever played? Probably not very good, and so on. So, Nathan, how did you get into composing, and was your first piece very good?
I think it was awesome. I don't know if that's accurate, but no. So I got into it. I started when I was in my doctorate. I was the first year of my doctorate, and one of my office mates decided he was going to take some just secondary composition lessons, a 30-minute lesson once a week. And I thought that sounded like fun. I'd always kind of been interested in it. I hadn't dabbled too much. So I went into my first comp lesson with, about 12 bars of a piano solo. And it was just kind of like, I don't know what else to do with this. It's 12 bars long. I don't know how to develop this. So that's how I used a lot of my lessons, was figuring out how to transition and develop ideas. And so that's how I got started. So that piece turned into a 3-movement piece for solo piano, which later became a percussion ensemble piece. And so my first piece actually turned out pretty well. I've certainly written pieces since then that are really not good, but the first one actually turned out kind of okay, luckily. Yeah,
that's cool. I fear that, like, I don't compose. Like, I compose, for classes, but I don't compose regularly, for sure. And sometimes I'm like, I wonder what my voice would sound like as a composer. And I fear that, like, if it was terrible, I would just be like, okay, I'm just not going to do that. Yeah. So I wonder what would happen if you didn't like your piece.
Right. Well, this is actually the very reason I've hardly written any solo marimba music. You guys know there's just so much out there. Yeah. And there's so much not good out there too. And so I just didn't want to write another not good piece. So I got a commission for a solo marimba piece from Jason Keeley down in Texas. Teaches at A&M Kingsville with Randy Fleming. And so it kind of forced me into writing a piece, because I had just put it aside. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And it was nice to be forced to do it and figure out how to write a piece that didn't just sound like every other, permutation written piece. So
sure.
Anyway, so I was happy for the challenge. I haven't written one since then, but anyway. I understand the fear, though. Yeah.
I think we've said it on the podcast a number of times. I think by now, I know I've said it in classes, clinics many times, but it seems a lot of these people, I wonder if they're more brave than brilliant. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of the composers we examine, you go like, wow, I had no idea. Like, say, take Steve Reich clapping music or something. It's like, well, is that genius, or is he just brave enough to do it? You know what I mean? Because if I wrote a different rhythm and did the same thing with it, you guys would all laugh me off the stage. You know what I mean? It's like it would be a total ripoff. So yeah, to do that first, is it brilliant, or is it brave, or is it brilliant that he was brave? You know what I mean? It's like there's a lot to unpack there. It's cool.
Well, and I think we could get into a whole other discussion about this that's maybe not all that relevant for today, but I think a lot of the relevance of art is not only who said it, but where they came from when they said it. Mm-hmm. Steve Reich didn't just one day wake up and think of clapping music. It started with the tape loops and that sort of thing. And to us today, that's not all that revolutionary. And we could all sit down and write a rhythm that loops on itself like clapping music, but for Steve Reich to have done it in his day and arrived at that point as I think what made it significant.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you got, Caleb?
Yeah, so my question, me and a few other people talked about it, is basically you went undergrad, master's, doctorate, the traditional performance or education path. With C. Allen, you kind of had to work with, sorry, lots of ums and ahs. You had to learn on the fly as far as, I guess, business side of it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, is there anything you would give to younger current students or anyone else about just general, what can they do now to avoid any business side missteps? Because right now, even higher ed, there's very rare we have actual business, music business classes. Outside maybe one.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're in a different time than we were back when I was going through school. I mean, I'm not trying to date myself, but I mean, that's true. I mean, I'm 42. So, we didn't have all the online resources that there are now. I mean, there are so many things that you can learn online about, I mean, like if we're talking specifically about copyright. I mean, you can learn all the things there are. I mean, it's still kind of a mysterious thing in some ways, but you can learn pretty much everything you need to know about those things. So anything that is of curiosity to you, I think just seek out as much information or spend some time talking to someone that has an immense amount of knowledge in that area.
Great. Yeah, good advice. Laura, what do you have for us today?
Yeah, so my topic today very much goes off on the whole health and wellness kick, but in a different way than I usually do. So today I was very much inspired by the connection that seems to exist between music and medicine. You often find doctors who are also musicians or who have a really great interest in both of those things. And circling around on Facebook a few weeks ago was a TED Talk video by Dr. Anthony Holland. I don't know if you guys saw this, but he is the director of music technology at Skidmore College. And his talk is all about this research and this study that he did based on his own interests about how you can use frequencies to destroy cancer cells, which I was just really quite blown away by. So
yeah, that's a headline.
Yeah, really. So here's just a little bit about that. So Holland is a composer, musician, professor, like I said, but he's always been interested in biology as well. And he was reading a book by a Japanese scientist who theorized that human cells would operate in the same principles as liquid crystals. So we're thinking like crystal glasses that shatter, meaning that perhaps you could do that to cells in the body. And so Holland thought, wow, I wonder if you could just use frequency to do that. So he was looking for a machine that would allow him to perform this research and eventually found one invented by a physician from New Mexico. And this device is a plasma antenna that pulses on and off, which is really important. So in this type of kind of high frequency therapy, if you will, if you just have a pulse that continues, a cell's going to explode because it gets too hot because it's constant electricity. So you need it to pulse on and off so that the cell doesn't just die because you heated it up. So he found the machine, and then it was about 15 months worth of research, but they came across a particular combination of two frequencies that when you used them at the same time, you could completely shatter a cell. And they started with microorganisms. Those frequencies consisted of one high and one low, and they relate to each other. One is 11 times higher than the other. So in our language, it's the 11th harmonic. Once you play those together, pulse them into the cells, microorganisms start shattering. And in his TED Talk, he has videos of cells on a slide, and you just see them, the borders of them just start to kind of wobble, and then they just disintegrate. and it's like the interior of these microorganisms just dissolves onto the face of the plate. So once they could do it with paramecium and other types of organisms, they started to look at cancer cells, which is the really, really exciting part. And they started with one of the most serious forms of cancer with some of the most difficult prognoses, and that's pancreatic cancer. And they found that those cells were really vulnerable between the frequencies of 100,000 and 300,000 hertz. So that's quite specific. And just for relativity here, the human hearing range is between about 20 and 20,000. So 100,000 to 300,000, like we're never going to hear it, much higher than we can discern. And the highest piano key, just for reference, is a little over 4,000 hertz.
I can hear that key.
Yeah. That's
not great.
You should be able to.
Yeah. Sounds like a wood block, right?
Yep. So pancreatic cancer cells between 100 and 300,000 hertz. And how they know that they actually focused on that. So they had a slide, and this is again videoed in the TED Talk. So there's a slide and you can see 3 pancreatic cancer cells. And then there's this other kind of microorganism just swimming by, and you see the cancer cells explode, and that one does not. The other microorganism just like looks and then swims the other way.
So it got scared at least.
Yeah, it knew that was not a place to be. But that's exciting because it means potentially that what if these different forms of cancer each have their own specific frequency? Or at least that's where my brain went.
Yeah.
Yeah, so cool. And so then they decided to look at leukemia cells and found that they could shatter those before they could even divide. And so they really kept focusing on that. And in a series of tests, they destroyed between 25 to 42% of the cancer cells that they worked on. And the ones that weren't destroyed, they slowed the growth rate by 65%. So this is, like, to me, this is so significant, you guys.
So just to be clear, this is the same way they like blast kidney stones, right? Except they're able to do it. They're able to target cancer cells and use their specific frequency so that they don't harm the organs and cell tissue around it, right?
Yeah. And this, the specificity of these frequencies is something that's still very much in a research stage, but the idea of high frequency, like ultrasound, focused ultrasound, is something that is used now in different ways. So, and specifically in other countries, they already use high frequency sound to treat different forms of cancer, such as prostate cancer. But the FDA has not yet approved it for use in the United States. So you'll see it in other countries, but not particularly here. And to go off of what you said, Casey, of course, ultrasound is used at lower frequencies as a way to like look at babies in the womb, for example. But once you get into those higher ranges, again, I read about this foundation, which is in Charlottesville, actually, not far from where we are, the Focused Ultrasound Foundation. And they, of course, just seek to raise awareness about this particular method of therapy for tumors, for different diseases, because it's non-invasive. It's non-invasive, it's less expensive than traditional treatments. It's such a big deal, really. And there's another TED Talk about the Focused Ultrasound Foundation, and that's by Dr. Neil Cassell, if you want to look it up. But he ends with this woman coming onto the stage, and she starts talking about her experience with focused ultrasound, and come to find out 2.5 months before the talk, she couldn't walk easily, couldn't control her movements due to Parkinson's. And there's a video of her and how she was then, and then you're just watching her on the stage you would never guess she had Parkinson's disease. And it's just simply focused ultrasound therapy. And she's the first person in the United States to have it done.
Wow.
So, yeah, so that's a big deal to have someone brave enough to go through it. But also she's shown to this point, as far as I know, no negative side effects of it, which is huge for the continuation of this. The cool tidbit. So Dr. Holland is not the first person to be interested in this, that you could use frequency to break up cancerous cells. It's been around idea-wise since about the 1940s. So it's actually a really old idea, but we've just recently kind of had all the technology to really focus it. In the 1980s, there was a French composer and acupuncturist named Fabien Mamel, who performed a 1.5-year-long study alongside a biologist named Hélène Clément, who together they shattered uterine cancer cells using not just frequencies, but listen to this, using a xylophone playing an Ionian scale based on C.
What?
Yep. I don't know.
I thought you were going to say playing Ragtime Robin. Different rag for different
rag for different
condition.
cells. Yeah.
Yeah.
Different
What rag
templates
for a
different
headache?
Cells. Yeah.
Is there a rag that won't give me a headache?
You don't like rags, Casey?
No, I do. I do. I'm just trying to say stuff. Yeah, no.
Yeah, sorry. I've maybe been rambling for a little while, but anyway.
No, this is
I
awesome.
thought that would be
awesome.
a fun way to to throw this to you guys. Yeah, they used a xylophone and some cells shattered in 14 minutes.
That's crazy.
That's really crazy.
Yeah, I would have never thought. I thought, okay, yeah, no, I have no idea. That's really, really cool. And yeah, perfectly amazing. Laurel, this doesn't coincide with everyone's conspiracy theories that doctors and pharmaceutical companies have had a cure for cancer for a long time now, but they've been hiding it from the public because they want to make money. I thought he would have been, wouldn't have been allowed to take the TED stage.
Oh, right, yeah. They would have said, nope. No.
Yeah, okay, point being that those conspiracy theorists are morons, and yeah, we have doctors in our families, and yeah, there's no freaking way. If there was a cure for cancer, people, they would, you would want to, you'd be famous and rich overnight, so yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, come on.
Is it as good as essential oils, though? I hear that cures a lot of stuff.
Wouldn't it be nice if it was like that? Like, oh, you have this. You just need to eat 38 peaches, and you'll be fine.
Or sniff this oil.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah.
Laurel, where did you find all of this information? It's so fascinating. I want to read more. What is this?
Well, the TED Talk has a lot.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, TED Talk, and then looking at articles. You can find a lot of information about this that is really, how do I put it? Homeopathic and not of any particular peer-reviewed study.
Sure. Yeah.
There's tons like that. And that's the bulk of what I found about the French composer is it was a little, it's quite a bit less academic in nature. What you can find.
Yeah.
Right.
They often talk about new treatments or breakthrough research on Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, and they're usually using a bit of conservative language, saying look, this isn't done yet. We don't know how far along they are. But what often happens is some news outlet gets a little tidbit of a report saying we're working on this. It may eventually lead to that, which may eventually lead to this, which may eventually lead to a cure for a disease or something. And then, of course, they report, we've got a cure for this disease. It'll be out soon. It's no, by the time, if the public's hearing about it, we could be a few decades away from it actually being implemented. But it sounds like that's not the case, because we're hearing this from the actual researcher, and it's much further along. And I guess that would coincide with what you said about the xylophone and people starting this in the 40s, like, yeah, a few decades later, we're starting to hear about it, and it's starting to maybe become a real thing.
Yeah. Well, and on that exact note, when I was researching this, I found articles that said, like, music kills cancer cells. I was like, nope, not reading that. Because,
Right.
like, that's just so not at all. You can just tell it's going to be a pretty bogus kind of article. Just by the title.
I hope this starts. I mean, obviously, because it'd be wonderful to just send cancer straight back to hell. But also, it'd be great to prove all these conspiracy nuts wrong, because they drive me crazy. I don't like reading about all that, and that stuff drives me absolutely insane. But thanks a lot, Laurel. That's fantastic. Nathan, I think you have something coming up in Australia. Is that right?
Yeah.
Can you tell us about what's going on?
Yeah. So there aren't a lot of opportunities I get to kind of bring together all the worlds of the various areas that I compose in and perform in. So, so I kind of alluded to this earlier. I'm writing pieces for band, or for wind ensemble, for percussion ensemble, chamber music. So this is the Australian National Band and Orchestra Clinic. This year it's in Brisbane. It's not a huge festival down there, but our publishing, Sea Island Publications, we distribute the catalog of Broga Music, which is an Australian publisher in Melbourne, and they distribute our catalog there in Australia as well. And the woman that heads up that company, Jemima Bunn, she helps organize this festival, and so she invited me to come down for it, both as a composer and a percussionist. And so, I'll be doing, I think, 3 clinics for band directors on 3 different topics, whether talking about composition, talking about percussion and composition in band pieces, but also talking about how to deal with percussionists in band rehearsals, because we know that we're kind of jerks in the back of the band room if we're not given quality things to do back there. So kind of suggesting some tools for them to use back there. And I'll be playing a piece with the Queensland Wind Orchestra, which is an ensemble, I think, of about 45 to 50 university students from around Queensland. So the plan is, in my mind, I've been wanting to write a piece for advanced marimba solo with like lower level, like grade 3 band. We just don't have a lot of pieces that are like that, that you can go out and play with a middle or high school band and know that it's going to work, So anyway, I'm planning on writing a piece to premiere with that group while I'm there. So that's in October, and it happens to be over my anniversary with my wife Katie, and so they'll be coming with me.
Awesome.
Katie and my daughter Penelope will be coming with me, so that'll be the first long flight. Penelope's been on a lot of flights, but not any that are longer than 2.5 hours. So
how old's Penelope?
She'll be 2 in May.
Okay.
So she'll be about 2.5 by the time that rolls around. So
Man,
it'll be interesting.
That's so much fun, though.
She'll have her own seat. We'll get to test that out. We're going to Chicago for a gig in May over her birthday. So this will be the first time she has her own airplane seat. So anyway, that's one of the things that's just important to me, to involve them in some of these travels too. And if I get the opportunity to go, I'm going to lose money on it. But if you look at it as a great performance opportunity and clinic opportunity while having kind of a discounted vacation, I think that's a win-win.
Yeah.
Totally.
Have you been to Australia before?
No, I haven't.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, and Caleb's on the payroll, right? So you could get Caleb in there to chaperone,
to be our au pair on the trip. Yeah.
Ha!
I can translate for you from.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Very cool, very cool. Well, you guys, I do have a What's the Sound for you today.
Awesome.
Yeah, we do need theme music for this. So, okay, this might be a little sloppy editing in and out here, but I do have a hint for you, and it is that this is an instrument, and this is probably not going to be one you can just deduce logically. It's going to be kind of either you know it or you don't. But I have a feeling Caleb might know it because this is something we talked about a little bit in Percussion Lit. So, hint, it's an instrument. It's used in one of Ben's favorite band's recordings, and it's significant to one of my favorite composers who I've mentioned on the podcast before. So here you go. Here it is in another usage. All right, any ideas thus far, Ben?
So to me, it sounds like an instrument that was used on the Beatles song "Baby You're a Rich Man" that I'm now looking up on Wikipedia to try and find out what it is.
Oh,
But
nice. Yeah, dude.
it's some sort of synthesizer that it can only play one note at a time. Is that right?
Yeah, good job. You're exactly right. So the solo, that actually wasn't the exact Beatles recording you heard, but it is a guy demonstrating this instrument, and he's playing this similar licks from that song. So you're exactly right. And I think I have that song here as well. Let me see if I can find that real quick. So
I just found it on Wikipedia. Is it the Claviolin?
Yeah, you got it.
Nice. I thought it was a
I
robot.
thought it was a hurdy-gurdy.
It does. It sounds like that. Yeah, it sounds like a
The second
hurdy-gurdy.
clip did, yeah.
So yeah, Ben, you're exactly right. It's that solo on that tune. And any idea what this has to do with one of my favorite composers? I think Caleb knows.
It's the Scelsi one, right?
Yeah, right. So this is Scelsi's instrument. So when we were in Percussion Lit, we were talking about Scelsi. And Adam DePercio's on a few episodes ago, he found this instrument that Scelsi used. And if you're familiar with Scelsi's music, especially his big orchestra works, there are these really big and very specific quarter tone, microtonal sound masses that evolve really, really slow, and they move in and out. And it's just one of my favorite things ever. And Caleb just wrote in the chat, isn't this instrument called the Andolia, which is something Adam found as well? And we're like, wait a minute, I see this thing called Claviolin. So the answer to that is that it's called the Claviolin. It's built by Selmer Company, but they market it in Italy as the Andiola. So that's why when you read about Scelsi, sometimes you see it written that way. So he supposedly had two of these instruments. It's the small little electronic keyboard console. It's technically a synthesizer. It's a monophonic synthesizer. And the cool thing, of course, it has that hip, folksy, I don't know, kind of organ grinder sound like you guys said, but then also it has a pitch bending wheel. So in Scelsi's music, there's so much of that micro polyphony, and it's so specific. And I always wondered for years, like, man, his ear must have been so amazing to be able to construct those chords and construct those waves. Like, how the heck did he do that without like a very specific piece of technology? But the answer is he absolutely had one. So I'm just going to play for you guys a brief chunk of Scelsi just so you get a sense of how this was used. So anyway, one of my favorites and one of Ben's favorites. I thought that was so cool
That's
that
awesome.
there happened to be a connection between those two, right?
That's super cool.
Yeah, like
Yeah, and it has that like Megan thought it was a rebab, which is like an Indonesian instrument, right?
Well, that one's Arabic, but there is a similar one. Yeah, I think.
But yeah, it has this very sort of
Yeah.
Middle Eastern sound, and the Beatles obviously got very into the Indian stuff, and in the song they mix like tambura and like Indian instruments with the claviolin. So yeah, it definitely doesn't sound like an electronic instrument. It sounds like some sort of Indian instrument in that song.
So, and it's designed to mimic sounds of the orchestra.
Yeah,
So-
that's the oboe setting. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So I've heard it in these different settings, and yeah, they sound just totally different. So let me just read you guys real quick what the notes I made on it. This is an electronic keyboard instrument created by the Selmer Company called the Claviolin. Its development started in the 1920s, but it's in the 40s and 50s that it becomes popular. It's a 3-octave monophonic synthesizer set in a keyboard console attached to a speaker cabinet. Had several buttons to switch on and off high and low pass filtering, which is intended to imitate instruments of the orchestra. So you can find a lot of good stuff on a website called soundonsound.com. There's an article by a fellow named Gordon Reed. And it is this quote from that says, the standard Claviolin offered 18 on-off switches called stops on its front panel. The 14-note modifiers were named 1 through 9 plus O, A, B, V, and P. I'm not really sure what those stand for. And these switches were augmented by 4 vibrato switches, 1, 2, 3, and amplitude. So those are the names of the switches, and Selmer marketed it with this little chart configuration. So if you wanted to make an alto saxophone sound, you would use stops 2 and 3, vibrato 2, have the amplitude off, and use a range of M. I have no idea what any of that means, but on the setting on the instrument, that's what you would do. This instrument is probably most famously known for, as Ben nailed it, Baby You're a Rich Man by the Beatles. They were recording at Olympic Studios in London, and it's one of the very few times they weren't recording at Abbey Road. And apparently Olympic Studios had one of these instruments and they liked it. And supposedly, Ben, they made that opening solo by rolling orange up and down the keyboard. Instead of doing the fast finger noodling, they just like rolled an orange up and down, supposedly.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's kind of cool, right?
Or
it's
lazy.
It's fun what you'll find on the internet. So it also had a dial to slide between.
There's a video
sorry.
of Lang Lang playing Black Key Etude of Chopin with an orange on the keyboard.
Oh, really?
Mhm.
Oh, great. I'm almost done. Just a little more. It also had a dial to slide between pitches, allowing the user to easily find microtones. So Scelsi is a newly discovered composer here in the last, literally probably 15 years or so. I mean, Scelsi's exploded now, but newly discovered composer prompting several musicologists to say things like, we need to rewrite music history. So whenever they talk about microtonality in these big microtone orchestra pieces, the composers in the book is always Penderecki's Threnody, 1960, or Ligeti Atmospheres, 1961. But like we said, Scelsi had 2 of these instruments in Italy, and they were marketed as the Andiola instead of the Claviolin. Scelsi purchased them in 1957 and 58. He has several works predating the notated, quote, first microtonal pieces, which were like, say, Penderecki and Ligeti. For example, 4 pieces on a single note is one of his orchestra pieces that predates it, as well as several others. So anyway, that was your that's your What's the Sound for the day. It's the Claviolin and Scelsi and the Beatles.
Super cool. What do you think you could still find one of these things today? How are they still being produced?
No, I thought to myself, like looking at it, I thought, oh, you could probably find one of these used on eBay or on Amazon. I couldn't find one, and the few video and audio resources out there, they have people restoring them or going through like tons of pains getting them back to life. There is one that I would point you to, this group in, I think, Germany, Clangform Vein is a ensemble, I guess, and they have restored one. So that recording I was playing you, the pitch bending, that was their pianist working with it.
Okay.
So yeah, Clangform Vine is a YouTube video called Giacinto Scelsi Revisited. So you can hear this instrument by itself with the slow pitch bends, and these guys talking about restoring it and bringing back some of the Scelsi work.
Mm-hmm.
There's a pretty cool, I'll just put it in the chat, but have y'all seen, people are using the same sounds, but in electronic music, it's a different thing. It's not the high art Scelsi, but the Rolly Seaboard.
Those are cool. I played on one.
They're pretty sweet.
They're sweet.
So much stuff.
Yeah, they're really fun. I fiddled around with one at Sweetwater, actually.
Nice.
I was watching just this morning the MIT documentary on Jacob Collier, and they were using one in their like arranging process.
It's very cool. Yeah. Who's got a question for Nathan?
We have one last question for him from Facebook. I'd be happy to share, that Ben posted. It's from Brian Nozny. Was it always your goal to have such a diverse career? Did you know when you were in college that you wanted to be doing all of these things that add up to your career now, or was it something that developed over time and then you ran with it?
Yeah. Hi, Brian. No, definitely not. Didn't plan to have quite so much diversity. It's a lot to keep track of. But I really wouldn't trade it. I like the variety and everything that I do. It's the publishing company side of things. I mean, I started working for C. Allen, back in, I think, 98. So I've been with the company for 20 years.
Wow, great.
In one way or another. And so I started out just doing some formatting, engraving work before I really knew what the heck I was doing. And then it was just like Kinko's kind of work, stapling, binding, copying, all that fun stuff. And that role has just evolved over time. You spend 20 years with a company, hopefully you're gonna move up through it a little bit. So I now wear a lot of hats with the company. But just keeping track of everything else. The composition side of things, that doesn't happen while I'm there. When I'm there for the company. It's not just free time to compose. So all the composing things that I do that are, especially on commission, those are happening on the periphery of that job and on the periphery of family life too. So, So no, I hadn't planned on doing that. Things just kind of evolve over time. It's just like anybody. I think you have a plan that you set out, and things go differently for better or worse than what you plan, or you try something out and you don't like it and you find other things. So like I said, I really enjoy having the variety and the diversity and everything.
Hey, Nathan, can you tell me what you think about PDF publishing? Because, I'm just a small, obviously, I'm nothing like a company, C. Allen, obviously, but I do my own publishing, and Caleb and I talk about this sort of thing a lot, along with other self-publishers. And yes, it's about twice a week or so, get an email saying, hey, my music hasn't come yet. Can't you just send me a PDF? Or do you offer to sell it by PDF? What is your opinion on that, and C. Allen's feeling on that?
Well, we have everything in place to make the jump.
Oh, okay.
To start offering PDFs, but there's a reason why we haven't, and it's the security side of things. And I don't know that we're ever going to really totally get to the point where we can control that.
Right.
Companies have certainly tried. You can limit the number of downloads. Some of them, if they have software built, then they can limit the number of times they can print it. They can make it so that you can't share it with others in some way. But we know that there are always ways to sidestep this, right?
Right.
So I think the danger in selling PDFs that are not secured are just the ease of being able to email it to hundreds of people. You know,
right.
I mean, it's something we deal with on a daily basis. We get the same kinds of requests, you know, hey, I have a performance coming up next week. Can I,
Right.
You know, well, you should have ordered the music 2 months ago, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So I don't really have the answer yet. I think it's a philosophical question as much as it is a technological one.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
I really want to offer that kind of convenience to everybody. I do.
Mhm.
I think
it's just a trust thing. Yeah.
as a follow-up, I think it's actually even more on especially university professors rather than publishers to emphasize the importance of paying for works.
Yeah.
Like all my students use, I mean, I'm sure all of our students use the exact same method books. Everyone uses the Cerrone book, but I require every student to buy their own copy, even if they could borrow it from another student that's not using it that semester or something like that. It's like, you need your own copy of this. And I know it gets expensive and all, but it's an investment in yourself. So, but yeah, I think it's one thing if I'm missing one part from a percussion ensemble piece to call a colleague and say, hey, I can't find the percussion 3 part. Can you send that to me? But because I mean, it's so easy, honestly, to scan music now. Like we have a copier that'll scan it and email it to you in, just a few seconds. So I don't think that sending printed music is actually really creating that much of a boundary anymore, because I put everything on my iPad as a PDF. So it's super easy to scan it. I think it's just more of an honesty thing and an understanding that you need to support the composer in purchasing their music. And I don't know how long he's been doing this, but I recently purchased a piece from Pius, and he now sells PDFs of his music. And he has that you can only download it twice thing that Nathan was talking about. But of course, if you own the PDF, you can send it to as many people as you want, as many times as you want.
Although, like some of them now say, this was purchased by,
Yeah, I think that's smart. Like this was licensed to Megan Arms or
Yeah. So that's cool.
Yeah.
I think Pius wants people to send it around because he knows it's not going to sell.
Well, Casey's making that joke, but actually a funny story about computers is that back in I guess it was the 70s, there was this homebrew computer club in California. And there were 2 guys named Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak that were bringing their computers to this club and showing off their computers. And someone in the club got a copy of some software that was written by some guy named Bill Gates. And they started installing this MS-DOS software on all their computers. And Gates eventually found out about it and got very upset because he thought it was his intellectual property and they were stealing it. Ironically, because they spread the software so much, it became just the standard, and that's how Windows got such a dominance on the market, was basically people originally stealing it and distributing it. So maybe Pius has a plan for his music, Casey.
Yeah, he could be. He's smarter than he pretends to be. I'll give him that. He's smarter than he looks. And about software, just real quick about software, the same thing happens with big, like I've heard it with engineering softwares, like those CAD programs that cost thousands of dollars. College students can't pay thousands of dollars for these pieces of software, but the industry supposedly doesn't fight them because they want the exact same thing to happen. What's more valuable is getting these people competent on their particular software. Then when they go get hired by a big major company, they're going to buy many copies of that software. Or when they go teach a class, they're going to fill the classroom with, 4 copies of Finale instead of, for the price of the one that they stole, they're now making it the industry standard.
Pixar does that with their rendering software. It's called RenderMan, and anyone can go to their website and download it free and play around with it.
Yeah, sorry, Nathan, what were you saying?
Well, I was going to bring it back to the sheet music. One of the differences, though, here, we're talking about intellectual property, but intellectual property through music. So you're not going to probably get terribly rich off of a $10 marimba solo, right? But if it's at a level that thousands of university students are playing it, even if they didn't buy it, you're probably reaping benefits from your performing rights organization. So I think it's matter of how you view, as the composer, how you view making the money off of your pieces.
Sure.
You know, are you making it from? I mean, it's that combination of from commissions, from the sales of the pieces, from the performing rights, and you know, what is the balance there?
Have you done a careful comparison or a depthful comparison of like BMI and ASCAP and CSAC or anything?
I have not. So from the publishing company perspective, without giving away too much proprietary information,
just give away a little bit. It's cool.
No, but the majority of our composers are with ASCAP compared to BMI. We don't have anybody that's with CSAC. So, you know, obviously those royalty checks are going to be larger. I personally have had, I'm with ASCAP, and I've had issues past couple years just when they changed their policies and their formula, and a big difference from one year to the next when I know there are more performances than there were the year before. So I personally want to explore, you know, but there's no way to really do it without moving everything over to another place and then have you made the right decision. So I don't know.
Well, and I don't know how. Of course, I've had this discussion with many composers, and I happen to be with BMI, but I'm very bad at staying up to date with it. And I have a long list of pieces that I haven't even put on my BMI roster yet that I need to do. But yeah, it's be very hard to do some kind of, okay, which one is going to give you the the more money? I have no idea how you would figure that out.
Well, I posted something on Facebook several months ago about this very thing, and got a lot of responses from ASCAP users that had experienced similar things. But then there was one who's a really, really popular choral composer right now, Dan Forrest. And he said that his are just through the roof. And I think his pieces are being performed in churches all over the place, and it's being counted differently than those of us whose pieces are being performed on recitals at a university level, which are counted as educational performances as opposed to like a professional level, which are counted, you know, they're like maybe 10% of what you would get for a professional level concert.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, guys, it's about time. Any last questions for Nathan? I think one more. Yeah, one more would be perfect, I think.
The Heartland stuff going on this summer. Can you talk about that a little bit? You're with Matt Coley and those guys?
Yeah. So they, for the Heartland Marimba Festival, it's being hosted up at Virginia Tech this year. And so obviously, you know, Andy Stevens is there. So they'll have Escape 10 as guest artists for it, and they invited me to come up and be a guest artist for it because they're adding a percussion or marimba / composition track to it. So in addition to marimba lessons, people can also take composition lessons through the week, and so that's kind of cool to be a part of. And so I'm planning on writing some new pieces for the quartet to play, and hopefully something for Escape 10 to play while we're up there, and play some of my own stuff too. So yeah, should be a lot of fun. So a week-long festival, I think Sunday to Saturday, Sunday to Sunday in July.
Nathan, do you find people come to you more often for lessons on performing or on composition? I'm guessing it's more and more composition these days, right?
Yeah, I think that's probably true. Yeah.
Cool.
Which is weird. I mean, you know, you look back, 15 years ago, and it's not where you expected things to be, but it's definitely a cool development. So.
Yeah, it's very, very cool. Man, well, hey, thanks so much for joining us today, and congratulations on everything with your pieces and just how active you are and everything that's happening with C. Allen.
Thanks.
And yeah, man, Megan, Laurel, Ben, Caleb, good to see you guys.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thanks.
Good to see you guys.
Yeah. So thanks, Nathan, Daughtrey. We'll catch you guys at 1:35.